Most people think finding gold is the hard part. Experienced prospectors know better, because discovering gold is only the beginning of the story. First, you must find the ground that hides it. Then, you must separate it from thousands of pounds of worthless rock and gravel. And finally, you must reveal the treasure that was hidden inside the dirt all along. This is the journey almost every gold documentary leaves untold. Not where gold formed, not where ancient rivers carried it, but what happens after you finally stand on productive ground and decide to recover it yourself. Because gold does not arrive ready. It arrives mixed with gravel, locked inside concentrates, hidden among black sands, buried beneath material that looks completely ordinary. And the remarkable part, the techniques that separate gold from everything around it are often far older than the machines people imagine. Some rely on gravity, some rely on patience, some rely on understanding how gold behaves differently from every other material in the pan. The journey begins with mining, not giant excavators, not explosions, not mountains disappearing into crushers. Just one question: where should you dig? Because successful prospectors do not search for gold. They search for the dirt that carries it. Once that dirt is recovered, an entirely different challenge begins. Because a bucket full of promising gravel rarely looks valuable. Somewhere inside that bucket may be flakes, pickers, or even nuggets. But first, everything else must disappear. This is where milling begins. The slow process of reducing a mountain of material into a handful of concentrates. Reducing a shovel of gravel into a spoonful of black sand. Reducing possibility into evidence. And when that final concentrate finally settles in the pan, the last stage quietly arrives. Refining. The moment dirt becomes metal, the moment hidden color finally appears. The moment the countless hours of digging, washing, classifying, and concentrating finally answer a single question: was the ground telling the truth? Because somewhere between the first shovel of dirt and the final gleam of gold in the pan, prospecting becomes something remarkable. Not mining, not treasure hunting, but a conversation with the landscape itself. And by the end of this journey, you will understand every step. How prospectors choose productive ground, how they reduce tons of material into a handful of concentrates, and how they finally reveal the gold that was hidden there all along. Because gold recovery isn't one skill, it's three separate stories: mining, milling, and refining, and every nugget ever recovered had to survive all three. Unfortunately, the richest gold traps rarely sit in plain sight. They hide in places most people never think to check. Places where rivers keep secrets for decades, sometimes centuries. And the first of those secrets lies beneath your feet: false bedrock. Most beginners celebrate the moment their shovel hits hard material. They assume the search is over. Experienced prospectors become suspicious, because not every hard layer is bedrock. Sometimes clay hardens like concrete. Sometimes compact gravel creates an almost solid floor. Sometimes ancient river sediments become cemented together so tightly that they feel like rock. Gold doesn't care what the layer is called. Gold only cares whether it can move deeper. If it can keep sinking, it will. That means stopping too early can leave the richest material untouched just a few inches below. Professional prospectors rarely trust the first hard layer they find. They test it, probe it, break it apart, ask one simple question: can gold move through this? Because if the answer is yes, the search continues. Then another clue quietly appears: the pay streak. Most beginners imagine gold spread evenly across a riverbed. Nature almost never works that way. Gold travels in streaks, narrow ribbons, thin highways of heavy material running through otherwise worthless gravel. A prospector can dig 10 holes and find almost nothing, move 3 feet sideways, and suddenly every pan begins shining. This is why successful prospectors sample constantly, not because they enjoy digging, because they are mapping an invisible river inside the river, a river made not of water, but of weight. And somewhere inside that invisible channel, gold quietly waits. Then comes one of the oldest techniques in prospecting: crevicing. At first glance, it feels ridiculous. Digging inside cracks only a few centimeters wide. Working with screwdrivers, brushes, small tools, almost like archaeology. Yet some of the richest recoveries in history have come from exactly these places. Because gold behaves differently from gravel. When floods arrive, gravel moves, sand moves, even large stones sometimes move. Gold hesitates, then stops. The crack becomes its final address. Every flood adds another layer. Every season pushes more heavy material into the same trap. Some crevices quietly collect gold for generations, waiting for someone curious enough to look. Then another decision arrives. Dig or detect. Many beginners think detectors replaced traditional prospecting. Experienced prospectors know they simply answer different questions. The detector asks, "Is gold here?" The shovel asks, "How much?" One searches for nuggets, the other searches for pay dirt. Sometimes the detector wins. Sometimes the pan wins. The smartest prospectors learn to listen to both. Now another mystery. The river beside you may not even be the river that deposited the gold, because rivers move. Over thousands of years they abandon old channels and create new ones. What looks like an ordinary terrace above today's creek may once have been the bottom of an ancient river carrying enormous amounts of gold. These are bench gravels, old riverbeds stranded high above modern water. Most hikers walk past them without a second glance. Prospectors stop, because sometimes the richest ground in the valley sits nowhere near the present river at all. The old river moved away. The gold stayed behind. Then comes perhaps the hardest lesson in prospecting, knowing when to leave. This sounds simple. It isn't. A few colors in the pan create hope. Hope creates stubbornness. Stubbornness creates wasted days. Professionals trust samples more than optimism. If the gold disappears, they move. If the pay streak weakens, they move. If the evidence fades, they move. Because prospecting isn't about working harder than everyone else. It's about following evidence better than everyone else. Then one day, the evidence agrees. The black sands increase. The gravel changes. The bedrock improves. The pans become heavier. And suddenly, the river begins telling the same story over and over again. You're standing in the right place. This is the moment every prospector waits for, not the first nugget, not the first flake, the first confidence. The moment the landscape finally says, "Dig here." The shovel enters the ground. The buckets begin filling. Pay dirt slowly piles beside the river. Hours earlier it looked like ordinary gravel. Now it feels different. Because somewhere inside those buckets, hidden among stones, sand, and black concentrates, the reason for all the searching may already be waiting. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise of all. Gold mining rarely begins with gold. It begins with observation, patience, questions, evidence. The shovel simply arrives at the end of the investigation, because prospectors do not mine gold. Not yet. They mine possibility. And once the pay dirt finally leaves the riverbank, an entirely new challenge quietly begins. The gold may finally be captured inside the bucket, but it remains invisible, hidden among thousands of pieces of worthless material that look almost exactly the same. Finding the dirt was only the first battle. Now comes the second, separating treasure from everything trying to hide it. And that is where milling begins. Finding pay dirt is only the first battle. The real surprise begins after the bucket is full, because the gold may already be in your hands, but you still cannot see it. It is hiding under gravel, mixed with sand, buried inside black concentrates, protected by clay, covered by tiny particles that look completely worthless. This is where many beginners make their biggest mistake. They think recovery begins with panning. It does not. Recovery begins with preparation. Before one flake of gold can appear, the material must be broken down, washed, sorted, and reduced step by step until nature's hiding places disappear. This is milling. Not industrial milling, not chemical extraction, not dangerous refining. Just the safe, physical process of turning a bucket of raw gold-bearing material into a small amount of concentrate that can finally reveal what it contains. And the first rule is simple. Never try to recover gold from unsorted material. A bucket of pay dirt is chaos. Large rocks, pebbles, sand, clay, heavy minerals, organic debris, and somewhere inside it, a gold. If you put all of that directly into a pan, you're fighting the material instead of working with it. So the first step is classification. This means separating material by size. Large stones must leave first, then medium gravel, then smaller gravel, then sand. Why? Because gold hides better when different particle sizes are mixed together. Large rocks block water movement. Clay coats everything. Small gold can disappear beneath coarse gravel. A pan full of mixed material is difficult to read. But once everything is sorted by size, gold becomes easier to control. This is why experienced prospectors use screens. A simple classifier placed over a bucket can remove oversized rocks before the real washing begins. And here's the first important reward. Do not throw those large rocks away immediately. Check them first. Some may contain quartz. Some may be unusually heavy. Some may show visible gold. Some may be iron-rich. Some may be gold-bearing host material that broke away from the original source. A beginner throws away the big rocks. A careful prospector inspects them before discarding them. Once the oversized material is removed, the second step begins: washing. Dry dirt lies. Wet dirt tells the truth. Clay can hide gold better than almost anything else in a bucket. It sticks to flakes. It coats black sand. It traps fine gold inside tiny balls of mud. If clay is not broken apart, gold can leave your pan still locked inside dirty material. So the material must be soaked. Water enters the bucket. The dirt is stirred. Clay breaks down. Gravel becomes clean. Sand separates. The entire bucket starts changing. What looked like worthless mud begins turning into readable material. This is the moment milling becomes real. You're not looking for gold yet. You're removing everything that prevents gold from being seen. After soaking, the next step is agitation. Not violent, controlled. The material is stirred, shaken, washed, and allowed to settle. This movement matters because gold is heavy. Every time the material is agitated in water, gold tries to move downward. Lighter material rises. Clay suspends. Organic debris floats. Gold sinks. That is the entire secret behind safe gold milling. You're not forcing gold to appear. You're allowing its weight to reveal itself. Now comes another important step. Decanting. After stirring, muddy water may rise to the top. That water carries clay and fine suspended material. Carefully pour off the dirty water while keeping the heavier material in the bottom. Then add clean water. Stir again. Let it settle. Pour again. Repeat until the water becomes clearer. Every repetition removes another layer of confusion. Clay disappears. Floating debris disappears. Light material begins leaving the system. The bucket becomes smaller, but better. This is one of the most satisfying parts of milling. You may begin with a heavy bucket of dirty gravel. After classification and washing, you may have only a fraction left, and that is exactly the goal. Gold recovery is not about keeping material. It is about removing everything that is not gold. Now the next stage begins: secondary classification. Once the material is clean, screen it again into smaller sizes. Coarse gravel goes one way. Fine sand goes another. Very fine material stays separate. This matters because coarse gold and fine gold behave differently. A picker can settle quickly. A tiny flake can float away if handled carelessly. A small nugget can hide beneath pebbles. Fine gold can ride on water tension if the pan is dirty or oily. So each size group deserves its own treatment. This is where beginners often lose gold. They rush. They pan everything together. They wash too aggressively. They dump material too quickly. Then they wonder why they recovered only a few colors. The gold was there. The process lost it. A careful prospector slows down here. Coarse material is checked first. Large, visible gold, pickers, or heavy fragments may be found quickly. Then the medium material is worked. Then the fine material. Each size tells a different story, and each one must be handled with patience. Now we reach the heart of milling. Concentration. This is where the remaining material is reduced even further using gravity. The goal is not to finish the gold. Not yet. The goal is to create concentrate. A concentrate is the heavy fraction left after most lighter material has been removed. It may contain black sand, magnetite, garnet, lead shot, tiny bits of iron, and hopefully, gold. The concentrate may look dark, dirty, and unimpressive. But this is where the treasure usually begins to show itself. A full bucket becomes half a bucket. Half a bucket becomes a pan becomes a cup becomes a spoonful, and inside that spoonful may be the entire reason the day mattered. This is why milling feels almost magical. You are not adding anything. You're only taking things away, and with every step removed, the gold becomes harder to hide. But there is one rule that must never be ignored. Keep your tailings, at least until you are sure. Tailings are the material you already processed and set aside. Beginners throw them away immediately. Experienced prospectors often keep them in a separate bucket until the final cleanup is complete. Why? Because mistakes happen. Gold can be lost during classification. Fine flakes can escape in muddy water. Small pieces can remain trapped in clay. If the first cleanup looks suspiciously poor, the tailings can be checked again. That one habit can save gold. The pay dirt has been classified, washed, cleaned, sorted, reduced. The useless material has begun disappearing. The heavy fraction is finally concentrated. But the gold is still not finished. It is sitting inside black sand, mixed with dense minerals, protected by heavies that refuse to leave easily. And this is where the next stage begins. Because milling does not end when you create concentrate. It ends when you learn how to separate the gold from the final material trying to hide it. At first glance, concentrate looks disappointing. Black sand, dark grains, heavy material, nothing that resembles treasure, nothing that resembles the reason you spent hours digging beside a river. Yet experienced prospectors know something important. This black material is not the enemy. It is evidence, because black sand and gold share a secret. They obey many of the same physical rules. When water slows, black sand stops. Gold often stops beside it. When gravity separates material, black sand sinks. Gold sinks faster. Think of black sand as the crowd standing around the treasure. The crowd isn't the prize, but the prize is often somewhere nearby. Now begins the final reduction. The concentrate enters the pan. Not all at once, a small amount at a time. This is where patience becomes valuable. Too much material hides gold. Too little wastes time. The goal is balance. The pan enters the water. The material becomes submerged. Then comes the movement every prospector eventually learns. Gentle agitation, not shaking, not washing. Stratification. This is the moment gravity quietly takes control. The heavier material works downward. The lighter material rises upward. Gold seeks the bottom. Black sand settles just above it. Lighter sands climb toward the surface. Nature begins sorting once again, not because the prospector forces it, because density never stops working. Once stratification is complete, the lighter material can begin leaving the pan. Slowly, carefully, small movements, small losses, small victories. This is where beginners become impatient. They become aggressive. The pan moves too quickly, the water flows too strongly, and somewhere inside the escaping sand, tiny flakes disappear forever. Experienced prospectors work differently. They assume gold is always trying to escape. So every movement becomes deliberate, every wash becomes smaller, every reduction becomes slower. Because recovering gold and finding gold are often two different skills. Now another challenge appears. Black sand. Even after the lighter material disappears, the concentrate remains stubbornly heavy. Magnetite, hematite, dense minerals refusing to leave. Sometimes the pan looks almost black. The gold is there, but it hides beneath materials that behave very similarly. This is why many prospectors perform another reduction step. A magnet can remove some magnetic black sands, not the gold, only part of the crowd surrounding it. The concentrate becomes smaller, cleaner, more readable. And suddenly, the first flash appears, a tiny yellow reflection sitting quietly among the dark minerals. Not moving, not floating, remaining exactly where gravity placed it. Gold. Perhaps only a flake. Perhaps a picker. Perhaps the beginning of something larger. This is the moment every prospector remembers, not because of the value, because of the confirmation. The river told the truth. The evidence was correct. The landscape kept its promise. Now comes another important lesson. Not all gold behaves the same. Coarse gold behaves confidently. It settles quickly. It remains visible. Fine gold behaves differently. It dances. It slides. Sometimes it appears to float. Surface tension can hold tiny particles surprisingly well. This is why water cleanliness matters. This is why gentle handling matters. Fine gold rewards patience. Coarse gold rewards observation. Both punish rushing. Then comes another discovery. The pan may contain more than gold. Lead shot, tiny pieces of brass, fragments of fishing weights, dense minerals, even old relics. Prospectors quickly learn that rivers are collectors. They preserve history as efficiently as they preserve gold. Every heavy object entering the system follows similar rules. The pan becomes a geological diary, a record of everything the river decided to keep. Now the concentrate becomes smaller still, a spoonful, perhaps less. Hours of digging reduced to almost nothing. At first glance, that seems disappointing. A full day of work becoming a few grams of heavy material. Experienced prospectors smile at this stage, because they understand something beginners do not. Gold recovery is a game of reduction, not accumulation. The goal was never to bring home more gravel. The goal was to remove everything that wasn't gold. And perhaps the most remarkable part of milling is this. The physics never change. A prospector in Alaska follows the same rules as a prospector in Arizona. A pan in California obeys the same laws as a pan in Australia. Gravity does not negotiate. Density does not change. Gold behaves like gold everywhere on Earth. The methods evolve. The equipment changes. The physics remain loyal. And eventually, the concentrate reaches its final form. The black sand is reduced. The heavies are separated. The gold becomes visible. Perhaps only a few flakes resting quietly in the corner of the pan. Perhaps several pickers. Perhaps a small nugget hiding among the concentrates. Whatever the result. The journey from dirt to gold is complete. But one final stage still remains. Because freshly recovered gold rarely looks like treasure. It arrives wet, dirty, sometimes coated with clay, sometimes attached to quartz, sometimes hidden among stains left by the ground that protected it for thousands of years. The gold is recovered, but it has not yet revealed its final face. And that is where refining begins. The gold has finally appeared. After the mining, after the digging, after the washing, after the milling, after the black sand slowly moved away, there it sits. A few flakes, a picker, maybe a small nugget, maybe a tiny pile of yellow pieces resting at the edge of the pan. But here is the part many beginners do not expect. Freshly recovered gold rarely looks finished. It does not always look like the bright treasure people imagine. Sometimes it arrives dull. Sometimes it is coated with clay. Sometimes it is trapped beside black sand. Sometimes it is attached to quartz. Sometimes it carries tiny stains from the ground that protected it for years. This is where refining begins. Not dangerous chemical refining, not industrial refining, not melting gold in unsafe conditions, but the safe prospector's refining process, the process of revealing what the gold already is. The first step is simple. Do not rush to clean it. That sounds strange. Most people want to make the gold shine immediately. Experienced prospectors slow down, because fresh gold can tell a story before it is cleaned. A rough nugget attached to quartz may be worth more as a specimen than as loose gold. A natural shape may interest collectors. A flattened piece may reveal transport history. A crystalline piece may carry more value because of its rarity. If you scrub everything too aggressively, you may remove details that made the piece special. So the first rule is observation. Look before cleaning. Separate the pieces by type. Fine flakes in one place, pickers in another, nuggets separately. Quartz-attached specimens separately. This first separation matters because each type should be handled differently. Fine gold is delicate. Pickers are easier to control. Nuggets can be photographed and evaluated. Specimen gold must be treated with extra care. Now comes the first safe cleaning step. Clean water, nothing more. Place the recovered gold in a small clean container. Add water. Gently swirl. Let the lighter dirt loosen. Pour carefully. Repeat. This removes loose clay, sand, and mud without changing the natural surface of the gold. For many small placer finds, this is enough. The goal is not to make the gold look artificial. The goal is to reveal its natural color. Now another clue appears. If the gold still looks dull after rinsing, it may not be dirty. It may simply be natural. Real placer gold often carries tiny surface marks, transport scratches, rounded edges, small dents, natural stains. Those marks are not flaws. They are evidence. They show the journey from source rock to final trap. A prospector who understands this does not try to erase history. They preserve it. Now comes the second step. Remove obvious trash. Lead shot. Tiny bits of wire. Rust flakes. Brass fragments. Fishing sinker pieces. All of these can appear in concentrates because rivers collect heavy objects. They settle for the same reason gold settles. But they are not gold. Use simple visual sorting. A small dish, a clean white background, good lighting, tweezers, patience. Pick out the obvious non-gold pieces one by one. This is slow, but it protects the gold. Beginners want speed. Professionals want certainty. Now comes another safe technique, the magnet check. A magnet can help remove magnetic black sand and small iron fragments from dry concentrates. But there is an important warning. Do not drag the magnet directly through the gold. Wrap the magnet in a plastic bag or hold it above the material so magnetic grains lift away without contaminating the magnet. This protects small flakes and prevents losing gold by accident. The magnet does not refine gold. It simply removes part of the material trying to hide it. Now the gold becomes more visible. The yellow stands out more clearly. The black sand decreases. The pan or dish begins looking cleaner. But the process is not finished. The next step is drying. Wet gold is hard to weigh accurately. Wet black sand sticks to everything. Tiny flakes cling to the sides of containers, so the material must be dried safely. Spread the cleaned material on a clean, non-porous surface. Keep it away from wind. Keep it away from dust. Keep it away from open drains or cracks where flakes can disappear. Let it dry naturally. Do not rush with unsafe heat. Do not blow air across fine gold. Fine flakes are easy to lose. Once dry, the gold can be sorted again. This is where the prospector finally begins to understand what was recovered. Very fine flour gold. Flat flakes, coarse flakes, pickers, small nuggets, specimen pieces. Each category tells a different story. Fine gold may suggest long transport or repeated grinding. Coarse gold may suggest a closer source. Angular pieces may not have traveled far. Rounded nuggets may have survived longer movement. Even at the refining stage, the gold continues teaching. Now comes weighing. Use a clean digital scale designed for small weights. Weigh gold only after it is dry and separate it from obvious non-gold material. Record the result, date, location, material type, recovery method, weight. This sounds simple, but it is one of the habits that separates serious prospectors from casual searchers. A single find is exciting. A record of many finds becomes knowledge. Over time, those notes reveal which locations produced better material, which gravel layer paid more, which trap held coarser gold, which recovery method worked best. This is why refining is not only about cleaning gold. It is about turning a discovery into information. Now comes another important decision. Should the gold be cleaned further? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If the gold is only muddy, water cleaning is enough. If it is mixed with obvious black sand, careful mechanical separation may help. If it is attached to quartz or has an attractive natural shape, leave it alone. Specimen gold often gains value from its natural appearance. Collectors may prefer a nugget exactly as nature created it. Too much cleaning can reduce character. The prospector's job is not always to make gold look perfect. Sometimes the job is to protect what makes it unique. By the end of this first refining stage, the gold has changed. It is no longer hidden inside pay dirt. It is no longer trapped in black sand. It is no longer confused with trash. It has been rinsed, sorted, separated, dried, weighed, recorded. And now, for the first time, the recovery has become real. But one question still remains. What exactly do you have? Is it ordinary placer gold? Is it a specimen piece? Is it coarse gold from a nearby source? Is it fine gold carried far from its origin? Is it clean enough to store? Or should it be prepared differently for sale, collection, or future testing? That is where the final stage begins. Because finding gold is one thing. Revealing its true identity is another. At first glance, every piece of gold looks the same. Yellow, heavy, metallic, valuable. But experienced prospectors quickly learn something surprising. Not all gold is equal, not even close. Some gold spent thousands of years tumbling through rivers. Some traveled only a few hundred feet from the vein that created it. Some pieces still carry quartz attached to their surfaces. Others remain sharp and angular, as if they escaped their host rock only yesterday. The first task of refining is no longer cleaning. It is understanding, and understanding begins with shape. Look closely at the gold. Does it appear flat and smooth? That usually tells a story of distance. Long transport, countless collisions, years of rolling through gravel and stream beds, nature slowly polishing every edge away. But perhaps the gold appears rough, jagged, angular. Maybe small crystal faces still catch the light. That tells a very different story. This gold may not have traveled far at all. Its source could still be nearby, perhaps hidden somewhere upstream, perhaps still locked inside quartz, waiting for erosion to continue its work. Suddenly, the gold becomes more than treasure. It becomes evidence. Now another discovery appears. Color. Most people imagine gold as one color. Nature disagrees. Some gold appears deep yellow. Some looks pale. Some carries an orange tint. Some appears almost silver in certain light. Why? Because natural gold rarely exists alone. Silver often joins it. Sometimes copper joins it. The mixture changes the color. The appearance changes, even before testing. The gold begins revealing clues about its geological history. Then comes another important step. Storage. This sounds simple. It isn't. Gold is heavy. Fine gold behaves almost like dust. One careless movement, one gust of wind, one forgotten crack in a table, and a day's work disappears. Experienced prospectors become surprisingly protective at this stage. Small glass vials, secure containers, labels, dates, locations, weights. Every detail matters. Because memory fades, records remain. A single vial of gold becomes more than metal. It becomes a memory of a river, a mountain, a creek bend, a winter morning, a successful sample haul. Every vial tells its own story. Then comes another question every prospector eventually asks. Sell it or keep it? For many beginners, the answer feels obvious. Gold equals money, but experienced prospectors often hesitate. Because recovered gold has value beyond its weight. A nugget may carry collector value. A specimen with quartz may become far more valuable than its metal content alone. Crystalline gold may become irreplaceable. Some pieces are sold. Some pieces become family heirlooms. Some remain in display cases for decades. Not because they are valuable, but because of what they represent, the journey. Then another realization quietly arrives. The gold sitting on the table today once looked exactly like ordinary dirt, hours earlier. Nobody would have noticed it. Nobody would have stopped walking for it. Nobody would have imagined it was there. That transformation is perhaps the greatest reward in prospecting. Not wealth, recognition. The ability to see value before it becomes obvious. And perhaps that is the real meaning of refining. Not making gold valuable. Gold was already valuable. Refining simply removes everything that prevented you from seeing it. The gravel disappears. The clay disappears. The black sand disappears. until eventually, only the truth remains. Gold. Now think back to the entire journey. First came mining, finding the right ground, reading rivers, studying bedrock, following clues. Then came milling, reducing buckets into concentrates, removing everything unnecessary, trusting gravity, trusting patience, and finally, refining, cleaning, sorting, understanding, revealing. 3 separate skills, 3 separate stories. Yet every piece of gold ever recovered by a prospector had to survive all 3. And perhaps that is why experienced prospectors rarely measure success only in ounces. Because long after the gold is weighed, long after the photographs are taken, long after the vials are stored away, the memory remains. The sound of gravel in the shovel, the first flash in the pan, the moment black sand moved aside. The realization that the river was telling the truth all along. That feeling cannot be bought, it cannot be manufactured, it has to be earned. And somewhere tonight, a river continues sorting gravel. A creek continues hiding black sand. A bedrock crack continues protecting a small piece of gold, waiting for another curious mind, another patient hand, another prospector willing to listen to the landscape long enough for it to answer back, because gold recovery never truly ends. The next discovery is always upstream. The gold has finally reached your hand. Not the river, not the pan, not the concentrate. Your hand, after millions of years beneath mountains, months of research, hours of digging, buckets of gravel, and countless movements of the pan. The journey has finally become personal. Now another question quietly arrives. How much is it worth? Most beginners answer immediately. The weight, the scale, the number. But experienced prospectors know something surprising. Gold has 2 prices. The first is the metal price. The second is the story. And those 2 numbers are often very different. Imagine placing a small natural nugget beside a perfectly smooth gold bar of identical weight. Same gold, same mass, same metal. Yet the nugget may sell for far more. Why? Because markets do not only buy gold. Sometimes they buy rarity, shape, beauty, history. Collectors pay for uniqueness, investors pay for purity, refiners pay for metal content. 3 buyers, 3 prices, 3 completely different worlds. This is the first lesson of marketing gold. Know who is buying, because the buyer determines the value. Now comes another surprise. The gold price shown on television is rarely the price a prospector receives. The number flashing across financial markets refers to highly refined investment gold traded internationally. Natural placer gold behaves differently. Collectors may pay more, dealers may pay less. Specimen pieces may command large premiums. Quartz specimens carrying visible gold can sometimes sell for several times their metal value, simply because another specimen exactly like it may never exist again. This is why experienced prospectors rarely rush to sell immediately. First they study, then they decide. Now let us talk about 2026. Because this year has reminded the world why gold has survived every financial system humans have ever built. During 2026, international gold prices climbed to some of the highest levels ever recorded before experiencing large swings as investors reacted to inflation, interest rates, and global uncertainty. Even after recent corrections, gold remains dramatically higher than it was only a year ago. Trading economics +1. At the time of writing, international spot prices are fluctuating around $4,000 per ounce, depending on market conditions and geopolitical events. Kitco +1. For perspective, only a few years ago, many people believed $4,000 per ounce was impossible. Now it is reality, and suddenly, the flakes sitting in a vial begin looking very different. The remarkable part is not simply the number, it is what created it. Central banks continue purchasing enormous amounts of gold reserves. Investors continue treating gold as financial insurance. Periods of inflation continue pushing attention back toward physical assets that cannot be printed or created overnight. World Gold Council plus 2 gold remains unique. A company can issue more shares. A government can print more currency. A mine cannot print another mountain. Nature controls the supply. Humanity only discovers it. That reality changes how many prospectors think about their finds. Some sell immediately. Some hold for years. Some build collections slowly, believing future prices may justify patience. Major financial institutions remain divided on exactly where gold will go next, but many continue forecasting elevated prices into late 2026 and beyond. JP Morgan Chase plus 2. Then comes another important question. Should a prospector sell flakes, pickers, nuggets, specimens? The answer depends on the market standing in front of you. Fine placer gold usually follows metal prices closely. Large nuggets often attract collector premiums. Visible gold in quartz enters an entirely different market, where rarity may matter more than weight. Sometimes the specimen becomes more valuable than the gold inside it, and that surprises many new prospectors. Because gold marketing is not simply selling metal. It is matching the gold to the right buyer. And perhaps that is where prospecting changes forever. The moment you stop asking, how much gold did I find? And start asking, what exactly did I find? Because ounces tell one story, the market often tells another, and somewhere between those two numbers, the real value begins to appear. The surprising truth is that recovering gold and valuing gold are completely different skills. Finding it requires geology. Recovering it requires patience. Selling it requires understanding people, because the market rewards some pieces far beyond their weight, while others quietly become worth less than their owners expected. And before any prospector decides to sell, there is one final question that changes everything. Who should you sell it to? And that is where our final chapter begins. Eventually, every prospector reaches the same crossroads, not at the river, not at the pan, not at the scale, but here, the moment they ask, do I sell it or do I keep it? Because for the first time in the journey, the gold stops being geology and starts becoming finance. The market does not care how cold the river was. It does not care how many buckets you dug. It does not care how many miles you walked. The market sees only 3 things: weight, purity, rarity. And each one speaks a different language. Weight speaks to refiners. Purity speaks to investors. Rarity speaks to collectors. A vial full of fine placer gold may follow the international gold price very closely. A large nugget may command a premium simply because large nuggets become rarer every year. A beautiful specimen with visible gold inside quartz may enter an entirely different world where collectors compete not for ounces, but for uniqueness. And suddenly, gold stops behaving like a commodity and starts behaving like art. Now comes the remarkable part. The world of 2026 has reminded investors why gold has survived every financial experiment humans have ever created. Gold reached historic highs earlier this year, breaking price levels many analysts once considered impossible before entering a period of sharp volatility and correction. Even after those fluctuations, gold remains one of the strongest performing major assets of recent years. Central banks continue buying enormous quantities of gold for their reserves, and many expect those purchases to continue throughout the coming years. World Gold Council 2. Why? Because governments understand something prospectors learned long ago. Gold cannot be printed. Gold cannot be manufactured overnight. Gold cannot be created with a keyboard. The earth decides the supply. Humanity only discovers it. That reality has carried gold through wars, inflation, currencies, recessions, and generations of uncertainty. And perhaps that explains something every prospector eventually feels. The strange reluctance to sell, because after following gold through rivers, through black sands, through concentrates, through pans, through scales, the gold no longer feels like a product. It feels like a story, a memory, proof that the landscape spoke and someone listened. Perhaps that is why many prospectors keep their first nugget forever, not because it is worth thousands of dollars. Sometimes it isn't, but because it represents something much harder to buy: patience, persistence, curiosity, the willingness to believe that an ordinary piece of ground might still hide something extraordinary. And that may be the greatest lesson gold ever teaches. Because prospecting was never truly about becoming rich. It was about learning to see what others overlook, to recognize value before it becomes obvious, to trust evidence over assumptions, to follow clues rather than crowds. And somewhere tonight, a mountain continues weathering, a creek continues sorting gravel, a bedrock crack continues protecting a tiny piece of gold from the current above it, waiting for another storm, another season, another generation, waiting for someone willing to ask the same question prospectors have asked for centuries. What if there is still something hidden here? Because gold is not disappearing, the earth is still preparing it, the rivers are still moving it, the landscape is still hiding it, and the next discovery may already be waiting beneath someone else's footsteps, or perhaps beneath your own, from hidden ground to paid dirt, to concentrates, to gold, to markets. The journey is complete, but somewhere beneath the mountains, the earth has already begun writing the next story,